Hey, I'm Eddie Rester. I'm here with Jay Nelson and Sarah Beth Walker, and we're continuing the conversation about boundaries. This is our third in the series. What we found during the series we preached about boundaries is that you had questions. And so we wanted to take those questions seriously. Jay's been collecting them, and Sarah Beth is a licensed professional counselor. I'm a pastor. And so we're going to just have a conversation about what it means to set healthy boundaries, what that does for us. In one of our weeks, we talked a lot about family and our boundaries. So Jay, I know you got a lot of questions about this one.
The page is full. Yeah. So maybe we could just start here, right? I won't tell you who I got these questions from, but speaking of family, right? I mean, you both have two kids, right? You want to just tell us which one's your favorite? Anybody want to venture into that territory? No.
Not at all.
Sarah
No.
Beth, you sure? Okay. All right. Well, how about we start here? Right. When it comes to family and friends, if oftentimes the best place to begin is with ourselves. Maybe they've made us feel a certain way and made us do something we didn't. Right. The best place to begin sometimes is with ourselves. What are a few good questions to get us started on self-reflection?
I would ask really simply, sometimes I'll give people in my office a feelings chart and I will get them, some of them get really sick of it, but I'll just say, okay, walk with me through a few feelings from your day and just try to acknowledge and touch on some of those emotions from the day. And also, you can always know along with those emotions, there will be thoughts connected to those. So you can always look, if you have the thoughts, then you can go with the emotions. If you have the emotions, you can connect them to thoughts.
Yeah.
I love that emoji chart that you
Yep.
find. It really, and people can laugh
Yes.
about it, but I'm like, it's so
I
practical.
tell people put it on your refrigerator.
Yeah.
I mean, teach
About
it to your
3
kids.
years ago, my counselor pulled it out and said, Eddie, I'm like, I'm 50. I'm almost 50.
Yeah.
And she was like, just point.
Just do it.
Just point. Just do this. I think that one of the things that they talk about in the book Boundaries, Henry Cloud and John Townsend, one of the things they talk about with families particularly is pay attention to the symptoms and let the symptoms lead you to the conflict. And so what you really want to think about is what emotions am I dealing with and what are they pointing at? We don't just have random emotions.
Right.
Emotions are typically, particularly hard emotions like anger or frustration or embarrassment or shame, resentment. Those emotions point to a point of conflict. And typically a point of conflict is a place where we need to rethink a boundary. So I think the first thing is, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this?
And I have to add this in with a lot of times with anger. Anger is what we call a secondary emotion. So most of the time you will be able to find either fear or some type of sadness underneath that. So when you think about relationship with somebody, if you're used to going at them in anger, see if you can point back to yourself to say, what else is going on underneath that maybe I need to convey to this person. Now, some people might not be safe to do that with, but in a general sense, that's a good place to get to, is what's underneath the anger.
So it would be saying, just as an example, I'm really sad that we're not friends like we used to be. Rather than just going angrily, we're not.
You
what we
did
used- You did this.
or you should go over here, I'm gonna leave, or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I was always, when I was going through school for that, I was always very careful about when you begin the phrase with you,
Right.
then, right, they didn't quite go, hey, remember you have those fingers pointed back at you, but it was close. Right?
Yeah.
Just be careful. There's probably something going on. But while we get curious with ourselves when it comes to family and friends again, we all have boundaries. It's inevitable. Sometimes we've expressed them, sometimes we haven't. But let's just say if we got the pleasure of starting at stage one, right? Everybody was on an equal playing field, mom, dad, brother, sister, everybody in the whole family. How do we begin if somebody's like, I want to take a shot at setting some healthy boundaries, but we've never done that before. I'll take a shot. Here we go. And I would say, Sarah Beth, how do we actually do that? How do we begin to have a healthy boundaries dialogue?
yeah, I don't know, I just picture this, like getting together at the dinner table, and I actually have these questions that I give families. It's just like 5 different questions where it goes through, what are some of the feelings I've been feeling lately. What are some struggles I've been having? What's something I need or want? And sometimes you get to directly connect that with the person next to you. I think that would just at least begin the conversation around, so that way the other person in the family can see, oh, this person's struggling with this, and just start that conversation. Well, how can I help you in this? Yeah. Or vice versa, how can I help you in what you're going through? So that can kind of learn how to draw the line in a way.
I think one of the things that blurs the line in families is often the conversation that we had in the very first week from Galatians about bearing one another's burdens and carrying your own load. Yeah. And I think sometimes that gets blurred in families because everything feels like I should be able to help. I should help. I am required to help because I'm a son or I'm a daughter or I'm a dad or a mom. So it may be a conversation around, hey, you're 19. One of my daughters is 19. At this stage, my hope is that you will be responsible for this. And so it's beginning the conversation. One of my daughters a while back, I was very clear, Dad, I don't need you tracking me anymore. I'm old enough.
Just like that, your Life 360.
It all just went away.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was a shift in responsibility and burden. Now she carries that load of where she is. And I think sometimes it's having those conversations, like you say, around the dinner table over the course of time. Because boundaries, as kids get older, as spouse relationships change, boundaries have to change as well.
I love the way that you guys both talked about that, because there's a phrase I heard somewhere, and it just said, start where you can, not where you can't. Right? And I love that you're like, you don't have to go to school to understand it. You don't have to go to seminary. You don't have to study. It's just, you got to sit down at the table and go, hey, on Tuesday, we're going to talk. We're just going to talk. And I think that the thing, again, working with students for as long as I have, is that and I'm biased toward them, and I know it, so I'll just go ahead and throw it out there, is that let's just say there were 5 people there, right? Mom, dad, and 3 kids. And there's such a value in those 3 kids also having a voice there, because you just go, hey, I'm hearing you, not as an equal, but I am hearing you. And I don't necessarily need anything from you right now, but just hearing you.
Can I do a commercial for the dinner table?
Please.
Almost every family well-being statistic somehow points back to the dinner table. And even families who commit to eating dinner with each other, you know how long the average dinner lasts?
Probably not long.
9 minutes. 9 minutes. We timed it one night at our house. And you sit down with your plate, throw the food in, and it's over. Everybody throws a plate, puts plates away. So I think sometimes we're going to have an extended dinner.
Yeah. I mean, like, almost, some people have, like, put their phones over in a basket and set the timer for 30 minutes, and just, I think we just gloss over the days when there's so much underneath it all for kids, for parents, and those questions that I was talking about, like, those get to the deep things kind of quicker,
And if we're not spending that time at the table, I think we don't have the opportunity, because talking about responsibilities and what's okay, what's not okay, talking about how to set boundaries is not an in-passing conversation.
Right.
It has to be an invested conversation.
That's right.
And even if it's not at the dinner table, it might be in the car, it might be before you go to bed. Like, sometimes that's a good spot. Everybody kind of gather up or talk or whatever. I mean, it takes intentionality, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it takes, practice, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it's hard, but you can start somewhere.
And I think I love that. It's intentionality is not just being in the same vicinity.
Right.
Right. Like, we can be in the same vicinity and all on our phones, and we're not even in the same orbit.
Right. But here's the thing that I've found is if you extend the dinner time, this is because after we timed ourselves, we did. You begin to talk about things because you've got dead air. You've all shoveled the food in, and then you've got dead air. And so I think you don't have to do that every dinner, but I think sometimes it's good.
Even if you just did it once a week, really, I mean, that would be nice,
Yeah.
So,
Well, it just compounds over time.
yeah.
Exactly.
And they know what's coming.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit, and I love that conversation. I wish we could have a whole session over the dinner table and how we can do,
Yeah.
how we can do that well. Maybe that'll be the
I
next
could
thing.
get going on that.
I know, yeah.
Beyond the 9 minutes. That's
Yeah,
what
beyond the
we're-
9
Answer all
minutes,
the
yeah.
questions.
But let's shift a little bit. This is one of the questions from our young adults specifically. It said concerning a boundary that you've put yourself in. Okay, like you. Let's just say you and a friend are in whatever situation it may be, and you find yourself in the place of going like, either maybe they've overshared. Maybe they are beginning to change their attitude or change their behaviors into something that you're a bit uncomfortable with. How do you? And this was their word, and I thought it was great. How do you recraft a boundary with somebody that you're like, golly, man, we've known each other forever, and you're like, yeah, but it's different now. How do we recraft that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one for sure.
Yes.
It really is. I think for even what comes up for me personally is I'm thinking about like the uncomfortableness that brings up probably for that person who's like, I don't want them to overshare, but they are. And I mean, I really would just say taking that risk, that hopefully that friendship, there would be an understanding of respect of your boundaries as the person who was on the receiving end, and that taking that risk to say, hey, look, I really appreciate you sharing, and I care about you, and that kind of thing, but like I can help you in this way, like telling them what you can do, but also knowing that there's a limit that you have
Right.
and how much you can help.
Right.
And so,
Well, let me push it a step further.
No, go ahead, yeah.
What if you were like, and I hope they would respect your boundaries, right? But again, let's get it down on the ground floor. What if they don't?
Yeah.
What then? And because we're also still trying to do this, right? Perfect question for a pastor, right? We're also still trying to do this as a Christian.
As one who loves.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that comes to my mind is a friend of mine, Pat Ward, who's a former pastor but now is a counselor in Oxford. And I talked about this in the sermon on family, orbits.
Yeah. I found that to be really helpful.
You know, sometimes in life people can be in close orbit to us, and at other times it's best for them, for you, for the relationship itself, for the orbit to be farther away, so that you're not burning each other up, you're not freezing each other out. And part of growing up sometimes is trying to figure out where's the orbit for people. And it's okay sometimes if an orbit has to drift farther away. It's okay sometimes if you're like, I've got to restore that relationship and bring them closer in at this phase of life. That's just part, I think, of growing up and figuring out how to do friendships and family and relationships.
and I will say, like, just a really practical, like, that person is not being mean
Right.
by saying, hey, look, I love you, I care about you, but this is how much I can give to you right now and helping you through this. It's not mean. It's just knowing what your limit is. And kind of along the same lines, like, I tell people a lot in my office that we all have seasons of friendships. And sometimes whatever season you're in might include these 5 people. And you know what? In another season, it might kind of change because you need these 3 people. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's hard though.
I think about it when you hear, like, especially with high school students, like, these people will be in my wedding, and in my head I think, no, they probably won't.
Yeah.
They probably won't, because y'all will go to different colleges and they'll go a different way. Man, I've loved this. I think we could talk forever about family and friends, and because it just hits at the heart of where we all are. But what if we were trying to get a takeaway from this to go, man, I want to. We opened up right with that. If we're willing to begin with ourselves, but when it comes to our family and our friends, what's a good question that we can when this camera turns off, we can take this and go, I need to explore that a little bit further, whether it be for me or for our whole family in general.
I'm going to go back to the orbit conversation of maybe it's just a conversation of who's flying too close in right now
That's good.
that I need to give some space to, or who's far away right now that I need them closer in. it's okay. I've had seasons of my life where my brother and sister and I, we've shifted orbits. I talked about my relationship with my father. It's okay to think in that way. And it may just be time to ask the question of what orbit do I need certain people in my life?
That's helpful.
Yeah, I would say kind of along the lines of your question about the friend and the two friends having the conversation and the oversharing. To the person who is listening to the person who's oversharing, or they're like, I really need to draw this boundary, take that risk and know and ask yourself the question, kind of again, what's going on with me? Why am I trying to please this person so much? Like, I'm only one person, and kind of see if you can draw. I literally will tell people, see if you can visualize a line between you and this other person. What would be on this side and what would be on that side?
That's good. That's really helpful. That's what we hope, right? We hope this series on boundaries will help you not just know more about the scripture, right? About your yeses and your nos, but how are we going to take those yeses and those nos, like our ability to think, act, and speak like a Christian, someone that just loves the Lord with all our heart and soul and mind and strength, and we begin to love our family well. We hope you'll be able to do that. Trust that these conversations are going to be helpful in pushing us all forward.